Hi and good evening, everybody. Welcome to what is the third edition of the Rain and Horn Potts Point Elizabeth Bay web series. And last week, I know I sort of did thank everybody for joining us. It's been an incredible response to what we've done so far, which is great. And I think it's a testament to the people that you can see in front of you, with the exception of Damien Cooley, who I'll introduce in a moment. But the fact that so many people are tuning in each week is really fantastic. And I think it also augurs well for the fact and the respect of people like Jane and Sam and Luke, who have got some great advice for people living in the local area and beyond, for looking for advice around what it is that these guys are offering. So I'm Paul O'Hanlon. I think first thing I'll do is I'll introduce everybody here that you can see tonight, because last week we had a bit of a technical hitch, which obviously proves to you that it is a live-to-air broadcast, with Jane having a problem with her technology. Jane, that's unlike you.
Hearing.
Well, I'm here tonight.
You are, and you're looking gorgeous in black.
Thank you, darling.
I want to know, what is that award that's in the background I can see?
I'm not always big on awards. It was about being, first in the company, for being, the best auction lister, being the top GCI, all of those things.
What's a GCI?
Just what we made for the year. Just different things that amounted to good things, I have to say, but nothing that I ever sit and think about, to be honest.
Well, that's good. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, the focus is on the client, right? So,
Always.
Oh, totally. And now I'm not sure how this looks to everybody else, and I know we feel a little bit like the Brady Bunch. There is a box. We can look at who we're going to fill that box with a little bit later on. But let's just talk about the people around the room. Sam. Hi, Sam. Sam Schumann, who is also an integral part of Rain and Horn, Potts Point, Elizabeth Bay. Thanks for coming back, Sam. I know last week I think I kind of chucked you a few difficult questions, but you always seem to come up with the answers. Why do you think that is?
You've got to be prepared. Preparation is key, Paul.
Totally. It's all about the preparation, and it's all about knowing the market. It's all about knowing what you do, and also I think effectively, and especially at the moment more than ever, getting the information right and being able to deliver people what they need to know in a way that they can understand, which is clear and concise. So how much of that goes into, how much time do you spend making sure that you have all of those statistics at hand?
A long time. Generally speaking, I love statistics. I'm very analytical with that sort of stuff. Numbers don't lie, both on the business side and for clients. So I put a lot of effort in really knowing my core areas, competitors, what they've got listed, so that I can provide both our clients that are doing things or thinking of doing things, but even just our past clients, just so they know what's happening. So I put a lot of time and effort in knowing the marketplace and analytics around each of our core areas.
Can I elaborate on that, Paul? I know you haven't introduced me yet, but to be fair, Sam...
You need no introduction, Luke. You need no introduction. Who's that ringing?
Not me.
It's not me.
Who is it? Before we started, let's just let everyone know. Before we started, I said, make sure everybody...
Don't forget, I'm using Laura's laptop because it doesn't work from an iPad. So it could be our Laura.
Paul, as I was saying, Sam, we focus a lot on monitoring the market. Obviously, for the sake of educating buyers around, what's on market and what's off market also. So we maintain strong relationships with other agents, not necessarily in our network, but for other brands. But Sammy's like Rain Man when it comes to numbers around what's been listed, what's been sold, what price. He can probably remember what sold on the 27th of June, last year in Paddington. So we're pretty lucky to have something like that, because I'm not generally as analytical as what he is, but yeah, he's very good in that sense. We have a daily whip every day. We all sit together as a whole business, and we talk about what's been listed, what's been sold. So we like to keep abreast of it,
Yeah.
I think also I may add something, seeing I have been missing for the last couple of weeks. I think one of the things with Sam, which is so amazing, and as we are as a team, is that we do sell everywhere. Damien has known me for many, many years, and as a company, yes, we're sitting here in Potts Point, which couldn't be better. We love it. Got a beautiful office. We sell right throughout the eastern suburbs and the lower North Shore. And Sam is abreast of all of those areas, which is really extraordinary. And I think that that's one of the things that I find so fabulous, is that we are in touch with what's happening everywhere, not just around the corner or up the road.
So before we go too much into the detail of that, I just want to introduce Damien, who's sitting there a little bit at the moment like, Damien
knows all these things.
Damien Cooley, thank you very much for giving us your time. You've had a huge day today. I know you've been working remotely and using tech to ensure that you deliver results for people that you are engaged by. And I think that's great. And we're going to get into the detail around that a little bit later on. But thank you very much, Damien Cooley from Damien Cooley Auctions. And obviously, you're the person that effectively has to come in at the end of all of these kind of like strategic planning that happens with these guys to deliver a result in a room at a moment in time, at a time when probably most people are at their highest stress level and, you know, at maybe wit's end or whatever. So thank you very much for being here. Looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. But I guess, Jane, maybe you should talk a little bit about Damien, because you're obviously going to say nicer things about him than he would ever say about himself. That's the first thing. And I think it's also good for people to get a sense, because we thought it would be great to have Damien on to explain what his role is in the process of selling a property. That's the first thing. And secondly, dispelling some of the, let's call it, old wives' tales, Jane, and I don't want to kind of refer to that with you in mind.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for the compliment.
How it's really important to make sure you choose the right person to actually get the result that you need to achieve as a vendor.
Look, I've been in the business now for 30 years, so I've had a lot of auctioneers over that time. I would say for me, the reason that we have Damo is he is a real thinking man's auctioneer. Everybody talks about the fact that the agent does their job and the auctioneer does their job, but it is a lot more intrinsically bound than that. You know, I can ring Damien and say, look, this is where we're at. What do you think? Damo's out everywhere in every area doing everything. He listens, he knows. He is one of the very few auctioneers that I think can actually advise you of how you can have a better auction evening. And, you know, as I say, I've done it for a long time, and he's a thinker. He's not just somebody who stands up there with the old gavel and says, oh, yeah, thanks very much, let's get going. And there are a lot of those around, young and old. Yeah. So he is number one auctioneer in Australia, and we're very privileged to have him. And he's very privileged to have us.
That's awesome. Damien, before I let you speak, I guess
I'm chomping at the bit. I just want to talk.
No, wait a minute, because I've got an important question for you, which then you can go for it. It's like, firstly, obviously it's all about presentation and all about performing what it is you need to perform. I'd like to know, is the tie, the orange tie, is that intrinsic to your presentation? Is that part of your kind of like how you like to present yourself to in the room?
You guys spoke about
the orange.
You guys spoke about presentation earlier, and Sam mentioned something about presentation. The first thing that jumped in my mind was the 7 Ps, and that's all about prior preparation prevents poor performance. And I think the big thing for me is that it's always that you're always on show, particularly when I'm conducting an auction. It is about looking good, feeling good. Probably for me personally, it's more about feeling good about myself. I find that when I feel good about myself, I actually perform a lot better when I'm running an auction. You know, incidentally, you know, Jane spoke about the fact that I auction everywhere. To give you an example of the last 24 hours, you know, last night I was selling in Double Bay. This morning I was auctioning commercial property out at Borkham Hills and Bella Vista. Tonight I had an online auction, which was a property in Newcastle that I auctioned from Sydney. Ordinarily I would actually travel to Newcastle, and I go there every 2 weeks to do my in-room auctions. But this one we had online bidders. and there was no need for me to travel to Newcastle. I could conduct that auction from Sydney. So I'm across, I guess, a broad spectrum of the market, not just residential, but commercial property and investment property as well. So I get to understand, I get to see a lot of buyer behaviours, and it's those buyer behaviours that really gives me probably more intel into how to be a better auctioneer.
So just get back, sorry to interject, but before we drill down a little bit more, can we kind of take a helicopter view about, I mean, obviously you're only like 29, 30 or something like that. You're quite young.
I'm 30. I'm turning 40 in about, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks. Far out.
Just
23rd of June. Send me a birthday card.
Okay. No, you don't want a birthday card. You want a box of something.
Right.
It doesn't.
Red wine.
He's got a very fine palate, this young auctioneer.
I guess my question is, at what point did you decide, I would like to become, number one, an auctioneer, number two, a real estate auctioneer? How do you kind of even, I can't even imagine that. What was it that attracted you?
Good question, Paul. I finished school in 98. I went to boarding school. My dad was a lawyer. My brother's a lawyer. We had like the legal fraternity was in my family, and I did really well in my HSC, and I actually missed out by doing a straight law degree at university. I missed out by 0.6%. So I got over 90 in my HSC, and I was all set to go and do an arts law degree. And I went to university for a week, and I was like, far out. I feel like I'm back at school. I'm done with this. So I went home and I told my dad, I said, I'm getting into real estate. And Dad was actually a conveyancing solicitor in Rosebery. And he was quite disappointed that I was getting into real estate. And I jumped straight into leasing with a company called Elders Real Estate in Randwick. And we had a really big rent roll. We had about 1,200 properties in our rent roll. And I was the leasing manager or leasing clerk at that stage for those properties. I then moved into property management. And that business was a big auction-orientated office, and they used to have auctions, I think, maybe once a month. And we used to, as a young whippersnapper, I'd go and watch those auctions. And I loved watching. Peter Kennedy was the auctioneer. I loved watching Peter conduct the auctions and the theatre auctions. Years ago, right? And my nan, this was about probably 99, 2000. Nan passed away, and Dad was selling my grandmother's house in Kensington. And I never forget it. And you're going to laugh at the prices, but Dad set a reserve price at $750,000 for a 650 square metre block of land with a Californian bungalow house on it in Cottenham Avenue, Kensington, in Sydney. And that property went to auction, and it sold for $815,000. And you could not wipe the smile off my uncle's faces of what an unbelievable result that it was.
What year was this?
This was like 99, maybe 2000.
Okay.
You may recall we had a huge hailstorm ripped through Sydney in April 99. And that was like my birth into real estate, that I got into property management with tenants moving out of houses and, crisis accommodation, etc. But long story short is I really loved what I guess the essence of what an auction was all about. It is about a property's worth what someone's prepared to pay for it, and it was worth more. That property was worth more to that buyer than what all the other buyers thought it was worth. Incidentally, my dad thought that buyer was an absolute lunatic for paying $815,000 for the property.
What's it worth now?
Well, those same houses are selling for anywhere between $2.7 and $3 million. Exact same house.
Yeah,
nothing done to it. So it's what I love about real estate. It's the fun part about an auction is that you might be surprised to know that it actually has absolutely nothing to do with the property you're selling. But for me as an auctioneer, it has everything to do with the property for the buyers. But for me as an auctioneer in getting the best out of the buyer, really what I'm all about is actually about reading people and about understanding what they want. It doesn't matter to me whether they love the fact that it's 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms, or it's in this area or it's in that area. Obviously, I'll use that to my advantage, and I'll draw on those heartstring moments during the auction. But for me, it's all about people. It's about reading people. And I had an auction last night, property we sold in Bellevue Hill. it sold for a really good price, and the owner was thrilled with the price. It didn't sell for a huge price over the reserve or anything like that, but it got down to 2 buyers, and I categorically know that the way that I conducted that auction, I added at least $50,000 worth of value to that property, and that was about the underbidder was out, and I was able to keep them in for an extra $50,000. Which was the end up being the difference between selling that property for $50,000 more. The owner was thrilled. The buyer was also thrilled because they bought it. But it was about my ability to keep those people in at that point.
And I guess
Can I actually add to that? Sorry, Paul. Can I actually add to that? It is really, as Damo said, how thrilled the buyers are. Yes, it might seem like, oh, they've paid a little bit more than they wanted to or whatever else. At the end of the day, though, it's done so nicely and so professionally, and the buyers want to know that they can get that. So it's not owner and buyer against each other, auctioneer. It is that Damien allows the buyers to buy it.
So
That's what it comes down to.
that was going to be my question, actually, is that obviously we've got vendors or potential vendors watching, as well as potential buyers or people that are currently renting properties who are thinking of getting into the market. So I think one of the things that we had discussed earlier when we were getting ready for this, Damien, was the fact that people need to kind of understand that your job is to, kind of look at both sides of the equation and find a point where they join, and that the kinds of things that are the silly nonsense around auctions, generally silly nonsense around auctioneers and what happens in the room, is effectively very tightly controlled, and the regulations and the rules, the laws are very strict around that. So people shouldn't necessarily feel nervous about going along to an auction. Correct?
I've always had the opinion, the way that I conduct my auctions and the way that I guess carry myself during an auction, is that I really believe that buying a property should be a really joyful experience for the buyer. I think that it's such a monumental moment in time that where they don't do it, particularly when you're buying your first home or you're buying the family home. It should be a really joyful experience. So I probably haven't done it every single auction I've ever done, but I always go into every auction with the view that I do it in such a respectful way to the buyer that they feel comfortable placing their bids and that they actually enjoy the experience. Now, the reality is my role is to get the best price for the owner. I'm remunerated by the owner and the agent to represent the seller, and I guess I make no apology for trying to get the best result for the seller, but I do think you can do it in a respectful way to the buyer. I do feel that if you make people feel comfortable and you help them along making their decision, then you do it in such a way that actually enables them to want to continue bidding. And that's my role as the auctioneer, is that when someone is out I feel that someone is out, my role is to actually keep them in. And my role is to ultimately maneuver the auction and say different things during an auction, strategize during an auction to get the best, end up being the best price for the owner, but I do it in a respectful way to the buyer.
Sure. And I guess maybe, Luke, I'll just direct this at you because I know you have to leave shortly, but effectively I'm just wondering, when it comes to educating people, when you're kind of talking to people about looking at stepping up and to try and buy a property, I guess you need to kind of help educate them to get into the right space and understand that, just because whether it's an auction or a private treaty or whatever, just because it's an auction doesn't necessarily mean they should sort of be more hesitant about it.
There is a lot of education which goes into preparing buyers for auction, but on the flip side, there's equally as much that goes into preparing vendors. I think the auction environment is when both parties are at their most vulnerable, right, throughout the whole sort of campaign. And that's what Damien does very well, understands sort of where the buyers are at, what he needs to do, on behalf of the vendor. And to be fair, really reads the play as better than anyone.
Right. You kind of got a couple of things.
Paul, please. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're
Can
not.
I add
It's
to
all
that?
about you guys, not me.
No, can I just add to that? When Damo speaks a lot about respect, and the way we behave respectfully all the way through, as much as we can, as transparently as we can, with our owners and with the buyers. Our job as an agent is to find the buyer. So therefore, our relationship with the buyer should be respectful and should be something that they're feeling happy to do. Something that a lot of people don't do, but we do as a team, and Damo knows this, we introduce both the owners and our buyers to Damien. So, you know, the buyers can feel nervous and he can explain to them, even though we explain as well, this is what's going to happen tonight.
Yep.
You know, it might be a bit confusing, it might be something else, but here's our auctioneer, maybe we introduce you to Damien. And we do it with both our owners and our buyers. Mm-hmm. And that is not only respectful, it also enables everybody to feel comfortable as much as you can in those situations.
Sure.
To put their best foot forward. The buyer wants to buy it. They are thrilled when they get their purchase. And all of this goes around between the agent and the auctioneer. And that's where Damo also steps in both levels.
Right. Sam?
Yeah, I think that you know, it's very good to note kind of what's happening when you're going into the room, and then there's that. But I think that the whole auction process starts before that, and I think that going back on what Luke said about educating both vendors and buyers about the auction process, a lot of buyers that turn into vendors are quite daunted by the auction process.
Right.
So, you know, it's about if you take a bit of a step back, I know that constantly now we speak to vendors that are looking at the, I prefer not to go to auction, so I don't want to list my property as an auction property. And generally speaking, it's about educating them then, well, why didn't you like the auction process as a buyer? Oh, well, it went for so much more. Well, wouldn't you want that for your own property? Oh, yes, I would. Well, that's the right. So it starts a long time before just walking into the room. I know that for us, it is the best method. It's tried. It's proven. A lot of vendors or buyers don't understand expressions of interest over auction. When people see private treaty, they believe it's already gone to auction and it's passed in, and it's, you know, it's a sale property to say. So I guess they don't take over.
No, I think that if you think about what an auction is, and let's talk about that, right? Because I think some buyers are afraid about going to auction. Some vendors are like, you know, I don't really want to go to an auction. I just want to put a price on it.
Yeah.
I think you need to understand like what an owner fears before you tackle the whole concept of an auction. And I think you also need to understand what the buyer doesn't like about an auction and try and overcome those same fears that they have. So from an owner's point of view, they obviously want to get the best price they can for their home. And from a buyer's point of view, they want to buy it as cheaply as they possibly can. I don't think it's unreasonable to think otherwise.
Yeah.
An owner wants the most, the buyer wants the least. What an auction actually does is that it really strips away what the owner actually wants for the property, and it allows you to market a property in such a way that brings the buyers to the front door. Ultimately, it's the buyer's decision on what they want to pay for the home.
Absolutely.
And the auctioneer's role is to get the best out of the buyer, but the property's role is if the buyer falls in love with the home, they love the home. A buyer should never feel uncomfortable about going to auction. And there's a few reasons for that. The first reason is it's actually the most transparent way to buy real estate. Like the buyer can go into the auction room and see who they're competing against. So there is absolutely nothing to fear in that environment. We are empowering you to make your own decision as to what you would like to pay for the home. And from the owner's point of view, the owner wants as much as they can, and they often feel protected by price they put on it. If it's a private treaty sale, so it's for sale at X amount, an owner will often feel protected by that price. So they feel like they've got control over the marketing campaign. What the owner forgets is that they actually have control over that price by setting their reserve price on auction day. and it's that reserve price that actually does protect the owner. I'm obviously a big advocate of auction, but I truly believe that it's the most transparent way to buy, and it gives the owner the opportunity to sell. If you know what, if there's competition and it sells for a premium, great. And if there's not enough competition, or if there's a standout buyer and that buyer wants to buy it before the auction, well, you can sell it before the auction. And you know what? If everyone's got the pricing wrong and the buyers don't agree with the owner and the owner's not ready to make a decision, you run to auction, it doesn't sell, you move into the third stage of the selling process, and sometimes an owner needs a bit of time to come to terms with the actual real value of that property. So an auction campaign, forget the word auction, it's a marketing strategy that we use to get the best result for the owner in the most transparent way for the buyer, and what we haven't spoken about yet, in the most timely manner.
Right. So what I was going to say, Sam, and to that point, thanks, Damien, for the lead-in, is Sam, you have some interesting statistics specifically around Point Piper and what's going on there. And I think that, to Damien's point, I think this adds a lot of weight to that.
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting because as we touched on it before, we're very big advocates for the process of auction, which is not the auction itself, but it is a three-step process. So, speaking recently to a property that we have in Point Piper, and we're making the decision on the next steps, it was interesting to go to a third party, which is Domain, which probably has the biggest or the largest statistics on that particular suburb. But, the time on market for auctions is, something like 70 days. That's taking into consideration all price points and all properties that have sold in the last 12 months in Point Piper. But, 70 days average listing price of 4.7, average sale price of 4.9. Now, private treaty, the average days on market, same period of time, generally speaking, the same properties, these are just apartments, just so you're all aware, but 184 days on market, average listing price is 4.7, average sale price 3.1. There's a huge differential there. But interestingly enough, going back to what Damo said and about having the opportunity to secure the property prior to auction, for the properties that have sold prior to auction in there, the average time on market is 19 days, and the average listing price 2.3 million average advertised price, with a average selling price of 2.4 prior to auction, taking into consideration all properties. So the actual process of the auction far exceeds the listing price, the sale price over private treaty, because I think that, obviously, again, touching on our preferred method, but when people in the Sydney market see a property that is listed as private treaty, they automatically think it's either been to auction and it's passed in, or there's something wrong with it and they don't want to go to market.
Right.
So,
they don't come and see it.
Yeah.
This goes back many, many years now. They just, years and years ago, private treaty maybe, people do not come to see the private treaty properties.
Part of the reason, sorry to interrupt, part of the reason for that is that they're not in any rush. When you put a property up for auction,
they have to see it.
Buyers automatically see we need to go, because we've got a date. So an end date to a campaign, and the numbers, as Sam said at the start of the webinar, numbers don't lie. It's pretty black and white why, the distinct advantages with going to auction over, leaving them dangling in a private treaty type environment.
I just also touch on the fact that it's what I can only speak for the eastern suburbs and lower north side. It is what buyers understand. They like the process. They understand the process.
That's my question.
And when people turn around and they say things like, "Oh, I don't really like auction, and last time I went to auction, they quoted this, but it went for so more." And look, I have to say to you, I just don't think in most cases that we're so much off the ball. I would say to you, they were quoted really low. They all got excited. They all added a bit on, but they didn't add on enough for the agents who quote really low on properties. And that's an awful thing. I'd be devastated myself. You go there, you've prepared yourself, you've added on, and you think, well, this auction process is hopeless. I thought it would go for $1 million, but it went for 1.2. Well, it was probably always worth 1.2. And the whole process for those buyers through the agent had not been transparent. So, you know, there are so many complexities to the auction process, but still it comes down to agents being transparent, having your number one auctioneer, and introducing your buyers, if you need to the auctioneer so they understand what might be coming up. And they love it because they separate themselves from the agent to the auctioneer who can say, well, when this happens, etc. It's another education.
So I'm not sure who to throw this question at, but I guess at the end of the day, and having been a vendor in an auction environment as well as a potential purchaser, at what point do you say, like, okay, as a vendor, you've got to kind of get them to agree to figure out what is their reserve, and how do you figure that out and then manage the expectations on both sides of the equation? Because my personal experience is that doesn't really usually happen until the day or the night. And how does that work?
Depends at what point you're at. If it's prior to auction and you're with an agent that you do know, and you know they know the market and they've kept you up to speed with the response to your property during those days or weeks, sometimes it can be days.
Yeah.
And you can recognise that you have a premium result very quickly.
Right.
Then you say to your owner, look, this is pretty surprising. Everybody else is there. This is where this guy is. It's over to you. If you go through a whole campaign, then you've already spoken over those 4 weeks. And you sit down, and Damien comes into that equation very much so, and we talk about what can happen on the night.
Yeah.
But it's all week by week, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Paul's trying to figure out about how you get to the point that you are setting the reserve.
Yeah.
I think Damo.
Damo.
Yeah, let's. Yeah.
Look, it's straightforward, right? Well, from an owner's point of view, well, what are you happy to sell for? And when the owner makes the decision on what they're happy to sell for, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the reserve price. It's about how many buyers are active on the property. What does the agent think those buyers are prepared to pay for the property? And do we need to strategically set the reserve maybe higher to use that as a negotiation tool with the buyer? Or is there lots of interest and it's actually going to be advantageous to have a lower reserve to notify the buyers that we're selling, properties met the reserve and we're selling?
Absolutely.
So to give the buyers confidence in that they're playing for keeps, and then hopefully they continue bidding and it sells for a great result. So unfortunately, Paul, probably every auction is different. Some auctions warrant a more competitive reserve set for the property, and other properties warrant a higher reserve set for the property. And it also depends on the type of buyer. If there's only one bidder, it depends on the type of buyer that we're dealing with and how reasonable or unreasonable they are to negotiate with. So every auction is different, but it will boil down at the end of the day. What's your owner prepared to sell for? What's your buyer prepared to pay? And not forgetting and notwithstanding the fact that our role as the agent and the auctioneer is to get the best result for the owner. I mean, that's what we're remunerated to do.
Yeah.
But I come back again and say in a respectful way to the buyer. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that buyers make in an auction environment is not bidding. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that they make. And I think that, owners look favourably upon those bidders, those buyers that actually bid and put their best foot forward. And so do agents.
Yeah, great.
And so does an auctioneer. Like, we're human beings. We're people. We have feelings. When someone actually bids and they're welcoming and they're doing it in such a way that's respectful, the same way we're trying to be to them. And I think it comes back to the candid nature at which the agent introduces the buyer to the property and the way that they speak to the buyer throughout the campaign. If the buyers come well prepared to the auction and they haven't been told lies about an owner's expectations and they've come well prepared, I think that relationship between the agent and buyer works so much better on auction night opposed to the total opposite.
Yeah, and also too, vendors, purchasers usually become vendors and vice versa. So
absolutely,
kind of, you know, I guess that the two words that you know resonate with me is transparency. You know, so that people understand everything's open and honest, and they can see what's going on. That's the main thing. And also, at the end of the day, you know, it's the property is worth what someone's prepared to pay for it.
Yep. I had an auction in Bellevue Hill. I had an auction in Bellevue Hill last night, and this is the example I was just trying to draw on before. Like we were on the market at $3.9 million. A buyer came in at 10. The underbidder and the person who ended up missing out, they really, really, really wanted the property. And it was about, I could have sold it at $3,920,000. I could have absolutely sold it. Hammer could have come down and sold. But I just recognised that buyer just needed a little bit more time. They had their kids there. They were making a big decision for the family. And it was about giving them the time to make that decision and doing it in a respectful way that enabled them to keep bidding. Now, unfortunately, they did end up missing out on the property, but I know that they missed out and felt like that they were not hard done by, that they had their best chance, and it was done in a respectful way. And I think that's really important.
That's why we have you as our auctioneer.
I was going to say, at the end of the day, you're the bad guy.
Seriously, you know, you've got to have people who have the same sense of what it's all about, why you should be doing it, why you should be making sure that the buyers are really happy even if they miss out, and that our owners know that we're doing everything we possibly can for them as well. Because at the end of the day, our relationship with the buyers, they will give you everything they have if they're treated properly. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we love our buyers and we treat them respectfully. Unfortunately, they just don't always get the properties.
Yeah.
Well,
there can only be one person that buys, unfortunately. We'd love to sell them many times over, but it's the nature of the beast. And if if they have a great experience with you, you can always help them with the next one.
Absolutely. And look, thanks, Damien, for being here tonight. It's been really interesting. And for everybody that's listening to tonight, we'll be posting Damien's details directly on our social so that you can get a little bit more of a sense of what he does. And I was quite impressed at the number of people that you have following you on social media, Damien. You must be very happy.
Yeah.
That's probably my cooking prowess that people follow me for these days.
I know.
And as I say, you have a fine palace as well.
The installation's really doing you well in the kitchen.
Anyway, Damien, if anybody's interested in getting buying a replica of your tie, where should they go?
Well, that's a very good question. Shane Rochford from Rochford Tailors makes all of my suits, shirts, ties, all of that stuff in the Sydney CBD. So
we'll send him our measurements tomorrow. So
I think it's worth noting though too, Paul. Although Damo does run an auction room, he's also got an online presence called Auction Now. So if anyone actually just wants to not feel intimidated by the auction, going into an auction room, but want to see the process around or have the pleasure of listening to Damo conduct an auction or any one of his team, it's worth logging on to auctionnow.com.au as well. You can choose property. You can go on. Not only is it a strong tool for us as agents because they can actually bid on Auction Now, but if they just want to, just go through and look at multiple, it's a really, really handy tool for anyone to kind of really get into that auction space.
And I also think on a closing note, it's interesting to say, Damien, that it's not just COVID that's forced you to kind of do this online. You've been doing it for the last 3 years, right?
Yeah. Well, we started building Auction Now circa 4 years ago, and we called it Cooley Now. And anyone who's thinking about starting a tech business, don't do it. I don't mean that literally. What I mean is that there's a significant investment that goes into to building this technology, and we've put a lot of intellectual property and time and obviously finances into building it. But it is an incredible product.
Right.
And as Sam said, like you can watch any auction, you can bid on any auction from any device anywhere in the world in real time.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's a great asset to all of us to have.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
they order copies of your tie online as well through the app? Can they just
I got my father-in-law to thank for the tie. He bought it for me for Christmas one year, and the color we already had orange as our company color, but the tie stuck, and it's what I've become famous for now.
Yeah,
so I thought I better wear it
I
tonight.
believe. I know. All right. Look, thanks, Damien. I'm going to eject you from the room.
Thanks, Damo.
Damo,
It's gone.
And just like that, he's gone.
Maybe we should just have a quick wrap up. We've been going a bit longer than expected, so let's just spend 5 minutes, just kind of quick whip around what's happening in terms of the properties that are currently in your marketing at the moment. What's going on? Any updates this week that have happened that people might be interested to hear about? So
I might just jump in quickly. Just we're starting to grow as a company, which is very good. But there's some really, really positive signs. Not just in the marketplace, but I think why we chose to go out on our own is to be really culture driven, and there's a really positive vibe just in our office as well.
Yeah.
This week we've hit the ground running. We can see that there's some positivity that's reflected both in our company and in the market, and we're going out, we're doing a lot of appointments, we're meeting a lot of people, we're getting a lot of buyers come through, and it's a really positive sign across the board. Is things going to maintain in terms of pricing? We're yet to find out. There is no crystal ball, but as it stands right now, as Rain and Horn, Potts Point, Elizabeth Bay, we're finding things really positive.
And Luke, can I just ask you? I mean, there are many ways of doing business. Obviously, there are the more kind of, let's call it, the more popular ways of selling a property. Then there are more unusual ways. There's on market, there's off market. It's a challenging space to be working in. How are you feeling at the moment about what's going on and what you need to deal with based on the space that we're all living in at the moment? What's the deal?
I think post COVID, obviously we sprung our doors open a couple of weeks before coronavirus came to visit. So it was a really interesting time for our business.
Interesting is one word.
Yeah, I had another word, but we're live, so I can't. Look, it was a really interesting time. You know what? It was a great opportunity. We learnt a lot from it. I think what we've found since COVID settled down a little bit is we're getting in a lot of doors. Obviously the activity's there from our business. We're speaking to a lot of people. We're engaging with people on the street. We've got people walking in off the street to talk to us, and so just reiterating what Sam said. It's really positive out there. Obviously, we absolutely love being down here on Macleay Street in Potts Point. But yeah, the market seemingly has shifted a gear again and kind of heading in the right direction. So fingers crossed that, it stays that way.
And Jane, in terms of for you, having probably run the gamut of all the different scenarios over the
yes.
Yeah. What's your gut telling you about where things are headed now, between now and whatever? I don't want to say the end of the year because that's just a silly place to end it. But what are you feeling now? I mean, I think Australians have generally embraced what they need to do in terms of the new normal, as we like to call it, and have
Australians embrace everything. It's one of the wonderful things about us. It was always, she'll be right, and that is particularly relevant even in real estate. The only time we didn't feel that was after the GFC.
Mm-hmm.
And after the GFC, if a property was worth $3 million and somebody would have been paying 3.2, they suddenly pulled back and said, what if? What if I don't have a job? What if I have to sell it again? Mm-hmm. So that really affected us after the GFC. COVID, none of us have ever seen anything like this in the world before. So we can talk about the GFC, which was basically financial, but now we're talking, even though that was global, which was one of the first times I think Australia actually thought about the fact that globally something affected us.
Yeah.
And now with COVID, where we have all of the deaths all around the world, it's a far more serious way of looking at it. But we've got buyers out there, they still want to buy.
Yep.
They have to buy. We have owners who want to sell, not necessarily have to sell.
Sure.
Maybe at the end of the year we'll find there'll be those people who have to sell. And those people really need to find the right agent for them so that they get the very best they can get in the marketplace. Because, doing things too easily in these markets can, bombard everybody. They just do it. They don't care. But at the moment, we're feeling really positive. We've got fabulous owners. We have buyers who are saying, I want it. I want to buy it. We're feeling positive. All I would say, there will be a time when there's going to be quite an influx of properties towards the end of the year. If you're thinking of selling, pop up now, have a look what's happening.
Yeah.
But look, for me, and I say it to our buyers all the time, in any market, if something's really cheap, it's cheap for a reason. And it will be cheap in a good market, cheap in a bad market. It's just cheap.
So, Sam, sorry to interrupt, Jane. So just on a final note, because it's time for us to disconnect physically and emotionally. What should people do if they want to talk to you guys? I mean, I'm hoping they know that you're in this fabulous new office.
Yeah.
There, 46A Macleay Street.
That's it.
They've walked past
There's a multitude of ways.
windows.
Yeah, there's a multitude of ways that people can obviously reach out. We've got our website, both Rain and Horn, Potts Point, Elizabeth Bay. So it's rh.com.au/PPEB. And but we've got all our socials, Rain Horn, Potts Point on Instagram, LinkedIn, you can message us. Like, ultimately, we're very confidential as well. We're not there to spruik ourselves, but or to spruik your property out to the market. We're extremely confidential, and we're just here for a chat to give you the right direction.
Right, and can I just say that I think it's also important. I mean, it's Rain and Horn, Potts Point, and Elizabeth Bay, but that's really just because that's where you're positioned.
That's where we're based, yeah.
So it's like, it can be anywhere. It can be Rushden Bay, it can be Darlinghurst, it can be Lower Shore, it can be whatever.
Throughout the east and the lower north side, always.
Right.
This is just a gorgeous place to sit in.
Yeah.
Really, all it comes down to, our office is a gorgeous place to sit in.
Yeah.
And we've got a wine fridge as well, Paul. So anyone pop in for a drink anytime.
The problem is you charge me when I come there for a drink.
That's right. We've got
there are reasons for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, thanks, guys, for tonight.
Great evening.
Let's wrap it.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. We'll see you again next week with a very surprised guest.
Look to it.
Okay. See you, mate. See you.
Good night, everyone.